This is Johnny Comedy, coming to you from an undisclosed location. Time to debunk another popular conspiracy theory. Yeah, look, I know these nutty ideas are fun to think about, but they distract from the real conspiracy, the big fat conspiracy right in front of our faces. The conspiracy theory I'm debunking today is one of those that rely on large leaps from little evidence. I swear you're getting dumber. I'm talking about things like taking a single passage from an ancient text and expanding it to a fantastic and ludicrous extent. It's like seeing two women hugging and assuming they're lesbians. I always have to watch what I say around my pervy producers. Anyway, today's conspiracy theory is some pretty creative bullshit. It's the idea that Jesus of Nazareth faked his execution. There are several versions of this theory, and the most popular one might also be the craziest. It's familiar to many of you from the book The Da Vinci Code. This theory holds that Jesus and Mary Magdalene, his wife, fled to the south of France after his fake crucifixion and had a mess of kids whose descendants founded the Merovingian dynasty. Just some medieval kings. Don't worry about it. Let's focus on Jesus and the actual historical record, and believe it or not, there wasn't a lot written about him until decades after his death. He just wasn't that famous until Paul of Tarsus and the other disciples had been wandering the world for decades talking about him. Probably worse. Anyway, this theory centers around a small town in southern France, where in the late 19th century, the local priest supposedly discovered some documents that exposed the conspiracy. Part of the evidence is that the priest suddenly became wealthy. Never mind that he was known to practice the ecclesiastical crime of simony, charging people to say masses in their names. But proponents of this theory say there's also proof in the church's gaudy decor. They say the priest planted hints about his discovery in the church's ornaments. Because, apparently, when you make a big discovery, the first thing you do is call an interior designer. And here's a good example of these clues. There's a scene depicting Jesus being taken off the cross, and it's a nighttime scene. Now, at the time, no observant Jew would handle a corpse after sunset, so supposedly, this is a hint that Jesus was alive when he was taken off the cross. Bit of a stretch, don't you think? Well, I walked right into that one, didn't I? Anyway, this theory has more stretches than a yoga class. Damn it. Anyway, proponents of this theory claim that everyone from the local priest to Leonardo da Vinci who knew about the secret planted hints about it in works of art and architecture. But they never answer the obvious question. Why in the name of all that's holy would someone sworn to keep a huge secret plant clues about it in, say, a painting for the whole world to see? That's the most sensible explanation I could possibly imagine, and it's ridiculous. Basically, this theory is built on a foundation of ifs. And if you gather enough ifs together, you can mix and match them into all kinds of fun, if flimsy, connections. And then the ifs seem to support one another. And just like those ladies, not a single one of these ifs could stand on its own under even the most minimal scrutiny. But let's take a step back. So on the one hand, they're saying that major plot points in the Gospels were intentionally false or distorted. Exactly. And there's no doubt that historical accuracy was not high among the priorities of the Gospel writers. Exactly. But you can't say that major events in the Gospels are bullshit and then base your theory on minor details from those same Gospels. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, she can have it both ways, but she's a special case. But the main problem with this theory is that it just doesn't make sense. I mean, just think about it. How could he possibly fake being crucified? Proponents of the theory say that the wine that he was given during his crucifixion was laced with a sedative that made it appear that he was dead so that the Romans would remove him from the cross prematurely. First off, that's ludicrous on its face. More importantly, that's just not how crucifixion worked with the Romans. They didn't take the corpses off the crosses right after the dude died. Usually, they'd leave them up for days for the birds to pick at. And the Romans generally didn't allow crucified persons to be buried. So much for Jesus being placed in a tomb that he could escape from. Sorry, Christians, but your God was probably fed to the dogs. And sorry, conspiracy theorists, but the idea that Jesus faked his death simply doesn't hold water. And even if it did, Jesus would just turn it into wine. I'm Johnny Comedy, and that's all I have to say about that.